Hi everyone. Now I was going to look at the criterion D. What I could say is that the first trend actually is to identify the relevant elements of the authentic real life situation. So that means that you cannot, like, if you give information, the students still have to identify what they need in order to solve the problem, because the difference between criterion A and D is that in criterion D, we have like one task, one thing, one problem, one something to do. Whereas in criterion A, as I've said, we have many different problems. So this is really different. And you also notice the similarities. Here, if I look at strand 2, you have to select strategies and then to apply the mathematical strategies to reach a correct solution. If you compare these two strands to criterion A, select strategies, apply strategies, and reach a solution. Let's look at criterion A. Select mathematics, apply mathematics, solve correctly. So it's basically the same thing. The difference is in the form of the task, where in criterion A, it's like an exam. Criterion D is one task where they have to reach one solution actually to the authentic real life situation. But in order to do so they have to identify what they need. So that strand is added, if I may say. So you cannot assess criterion A and D at the same time. It's either one or the other. And the strand 4, justify the degree of accuracy of the solution, might refer, for instance, to significant figures. Also in strand 5, justify if the solution makes sense in the context. Doesn't mean that they have to know from elsewhere. They can have some information in the task that they found, and that leads them to think that it's possibly a good solution that they have. So they have to try to justify that. So if they would have to find, let's say, the cost of something, but they have found in the, either because it was given in the task or through their research, they might have found some data and they could compare their answer to the data that they knew, and perhaps they say that it could make sense. So that's something that, and also you can validate sometimes the solution. Let's say using algebra, or another way might be to do it in two different, try to reach a solution in two different ways, and if you come up with the same solution, then it's good. So I guess that you can recognize pretty much what it is. So the reason I'm talking so much about the criteria, first, because I have had many questions about that in the past, and that when you will have to select the task, if I go back to actually here, the workshop, in Learning Engagement 3, you have to design the task. But what you need also while designing the task is to make sure that you have the right criteria assessed by that task. So if I go back here, sorry, it's been too long since I've connected. So let's go back to the design summative task. One way to make sure that there are many ways to make sure that the task is authentic. Well, you can just think about it and just try to do something like that you think is meaningful for the students. But one model that you can use is the GRASP model. So basically is to identify the goal. So you will have to, and often it refers to the statement of inquiry, because there's supposed to be a direct link between the state of inquiry and the summative task. And then you can give a role. And you might even differentiate by giving different possibilities. You could have something about energy, and you could be, for instance, an environmentalist. You can be the president of the country. You could be a citizen. You can be the CEO of an oil company. So depending on your role, you might have a different answer, and that's what's interesting often in criterion D. So you can state, even if there is only one, if you will give a role to the student and he's not just a student doing the task, it's more meaningful. So that is the idea of trying to get as authentic a task as it can be. The audience, once again, if you are a student and your audience is the teacher, it's not really meaningful. So you'll try to find, of course, in some situation, it might be, let's say, with a criterion A task. But still, we try to give them a role and an audience. So if you say my audience is a public, because I may be a journalist, but it might also be me, an environmentalist as a role that tries to convince the president of the country or the CEO of the company. So depending on your role, you will try to convince or to find an answer like with that in mind, with our audience in mind. And we often do that also when we do interdisciplinary units, because it just makes sense. The situation, you just define the situation. What is it? What is the context of the task? The product, performance, purpose. What the students will have to do. What do you expect? You have a report. You want the students to do a presentation with a PowerPoint. What do you expect? It might be a poster. It might be a video. So what is the product? And once again, we can differentiate the product because we can give a choice to the students. Then the standard, well, you have to select which criteria and which trends you will assess. It might be all strands from criterion D, for instance, but you have to combine. So basically, often we have a criterion B task, which is well, A, B, and D are often assessed by 3 different tasks, and C can be assessed with any other task. Criterion B and D, if ever you feel that the students in criterion D, because it's real life, sometimes the teachers tell me, well, they have to find a rule. The question which I might ask is, do they have to predict, to make predictions? Do they have to verify the rule? And often the answer is no. So you can find a rule in real life and it becomes criterion D. So understand that criterion D, A and B problems might become criterion D task. So what I would suggest in that case is to do a second task in the unit, and then you really ask the student to do predictions and find a rule, explain what happens, verify, justify the rule. So you can do a task, and perhaps then they can transfer their knowledge in the criterion D task. So you can do first a task in criterion B and then transfer in criterion D. So that would be interesting usually. So this is what is asked here. Perhaps we'll need to go back to your statement of inquiry and modify it. So this is like the main objective of module 3. Then the task-specific clarification forms, you have to keep that in mind. Well, actually, I'm going to go back to the activity here. At some point, you might want to try to complete a unit plan already. At that point, just fill up all the boxes that you've selected in your unit. So I've given, if you click on my post, I've given you many references. So reference for concept-driven examination, model. So you have many references here. There is the MYP unit planner from the IB, but I have my version, blank version, and version with comments. If you click on it, you come, well, this is the one with the comment. You can click here to download the copy. So that would be what you have to do. It's in a Google Drive, so you can download a copy and put it back in a Google Drive. It would work well. Everything that is in gray should not be there. So at the end, you just press on the right button and then you just erase the line. Okay, and delete the line. And that is really possible. So if I would do it, if I delete it, I'll make undo, then it says if it was never there. So the idea is here, when you're looking for the global context, you can just click here and you'll have it directly to the pages of the global context. So this is a tool that I've designed just to help. Here, the concepts are in 2 different places in mathematics. So here you see the key concepts, related concepts. It's in 2 different pages. So I've put it here. So I've put references like this. I've put the MYP like year 1, 3, and 5, a copy of that of the rubrics. So you can just press it, download it, modify it. So that's something that you might want to do now. Of course, the updated guide from February 2022, and then some questions like how we'll ask, for instance, how do we write the persistent learning scale? How do we write, to what do we refer when we will be in inquiry questions in Module 4? So this is a tool that I've given. So that's what I wanted to show you. And then if I go back here, so you can download it, start to write it. The task-specific clarification, then it is my 3 grids. I've done it because copy-pasting things from the IB guide is pretty difficult, so this is a Word document. And here, there are 3 ways in which you can clarify the task for the students. The first one being to change a word. So there are examples, so you can just download it and modify the descriptors for the strands, so that might be helpful. The second part is that, of course, you might think in advance, like what you want to tell your students using words. And you can also, of course, prepare the task sheet clarification. Basically, is often what we give to the students. This is the task they have to do. So the task, what we want to tell them, and the grid, the modified grid, in order for the students to understand that to get, like, to reach level 1, 2, what does it mean in that context? And so just do simple, small modifications in order for it to be clearer. So this is something that we should do. Of course, sometimes we don't have the time to do it, but basically, if we have time, eventually you try to do it, because we realize that our students are not like, do not perhaps understand very well what we meant. And the last learning engagement activity here is you refer to page 90 to 94 in the guide from principles into practice. It's here, and it's also, you see, well, here I've attached it to my post, and then just try to read it and to understand the philosophy of the IB about recording and reporting data for evaluation. So that is a module about assessment. I hope, well, if ever you have questions, you can ask them, of course. I've had actually no one showing up in the meetings, but still I will offer 2 offers here, Friday and Tuesday. Once again, you can just try to use the converter in order to see what time it is for you. Normally, somewhere, either during the day, there is at least one option that fits in their normal hours, but it's difficult to reach everyone, of course. But at some point, you might have questions. The reason why I did 2 videos here is try to tell you things that the participants usually ask me in these kinds of meetings, So I hope it helps. So have a nice day and a nice week.